welcome to today's English home language lesson. My name is Vash Suchet, and this lesson's proudly brought to you by the Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with the Saibono Discovery Center. As I mentioned to you, it is an English home language lesson, and we are going to revise today the paper 1 that you are about to write in your prelim exams. And even if you are preparing for prelims or the final exams, these tips are definitely going to help you be ready for those papers. At this point, grade 12s, you should be having a timetable ready and working with that to study throughout the next few days. I know we're actually going to start already with paper 3s next week and then head into the whole month of exams. So please take the time now to become more serious and focus on what needs to be done. So we're going to be dealing with English paper 1, but today I'm going to focus with particularly on the section which is question 1, the comprehension one, where we see so many problems, okay? But if you're looking at the papers, grade 12s, you would see that this paper is obviously 70 marks and it's divided into 3 sections. Now, 30 marks, as I mentioned, for comprehension, and it's usually about a 50-minute time allocation that we are suggesting to you to use so that you can work effectively in this question. Then you've got section B, tackling that summary question, question 2, all right? And there you already must have gone through the hints in class time, for example, with your teachers on how to ensure that you maximize those marks, okay? And then section C, covering question 3, 4, and 5, is basically your language structures and your conventions, dealing with, as you know, question 3, your advertisements, 10 marks, question 4, your cartoons, and also of 10 marks, and then question 5 of 10 marks as well. All right? So as I said, we're going to be dealing with your comprehension today. Good, grade 12s. So what do you need to take note of? Is obviously some errors maybe or situations that have risen in the last June exam paper that we wrote. And as you would know, it was a provincial paper. So we generally had all of you writing this paper. All right. So we do have some feedback for you and you need to take note of this definitely, please, grade 12s. All right. The first issue is that in general, we had the candidates who were able to deal with the concepts, all right, of what the passage was talking about. And here we dealt with something very relevant to your time right now, all right? So if you're in touch with ongoing things in the media currently, grade 12s, then that is more or less where you are going to see possible questions coming from, all right? But you have to use the last 5 papers, last 5 years of paper as well to make sure you're going through the definite themes that have gone through over the past 5 years, all right? So be aware of what's happening around you. There is the identification of topic sentences in each paragraph and general highlighting of important information. And this has to be done, grade 12s, because it helps you to then deconstruct the questions and make them a little bit more understandable, all right? So you need to work with that, all right? The next thing I want to draw your attention to is obviously the fact that we have issues such as the following. Remember that there is a logical flow to this paper. So everything is sequential. And that is meaning it's based in a specific order. And you need to then read the passage and work through the questions as well before you actually write down the answers. And you'll notice that there is definitely a sequence. All right? A quotation, grade 12, if you see it, please make sure that in that question that you see it, it is obviously something that the examiner wants you to investigate further. So you have to be able to look at the quotation and then translate that into your own words. All right. So what is key here also, grade 12s, is in that first 10 minutes of this paper, take the time to sit down and go through the paper, have a general overview of what the paper is consisting of. And thereafter, you would then in your head understand that maybe I need to tackle question 2 first or question 3 first. Whatever you decide to do, that is the time to do it. Use that 10 minutes constructively. Don't sit there and then just decide, oh, I'm here today and wonder wander around in terms of your eyes with other unnecessary things. So make sure you're focusing that 10 minutes on constructive working of paper one. All right, then we've got the types of questions that appeared in the June examination. These are obviously based on the similar ones of the last 5 years of papers. So you need to work with that. All right, and we have had the following appearing. That is the explanation of the use of the question in terms of a text. Secondly, the impact of a single sentence paragraph. You've got to learn these things, okay? You've got to also know about diction usage, for example, in a text, because that's going to give you further meaning. Remember, the author or the writer is using a specific word to give you a message. So you need to take note of the various words that you have come across over the last couple of years, for example, and understand that what these words mean in your general conversations and use them correctly when you are writing paper one. All right, so look at the impact of the diction that is used. And then you have the standard comparative question, that is of text A compared to text B, which is usually the last question in the paper. Right. So grade 12, what do you then need to also focus on is that you need to be mindful of the action verbs in the question, because this is going to signal to you what are we wanting you to do. So you will look at particular terms like comment or critically discuss, explain, or even discuss something, okay? You need to already have that terminology in your books. And as you go through your books, as you're revising now, you would know that when I have this term of critically comment, what does my examiner expect of me? All right? Go through that, please. It should be actually on the wall next to where you are studying, or next to you on a clipboard, for example, where you keep on referring to these words. All right. Then the next thing, obviously there you would look at that in terms of the mark allocation. Keywords such as diction, style, introduction, conclusion, imagery, all right? Paradox, irony, satire will appear in the paper, and these will require you to have a specific understanding of it. In reference to what? That is what we're talking about. In reference to the text that is being used in the paper. All right, so structure your responses in the correct way, please, grade 12s. Good. The following information also you need to take note of is generic concepts that you need to work with, particularly when dealing with the stylistic devices. And then link this to the question in the context of what is being spoken about. For example, the writer's use of a single line paragraph. Okay, you must know why they use a single line paragraph, and then link it to the text that is in front of you. You must deal with the concept of the validity of the writer's conclusion. All right, the writer will give you all his information, and at the end he will give you a viewpoint that he holds, for example. You need to then know why is that the case, and is it a valid conclusion when related to the title and the content of the text. All right, you need to work with this, grade 12. They look at the reasons why the writer starts a paragraph with the question, for example. All right, then look at the other ones, which is the visual component here of the comprehension. All right, it doesn't focus on the skills of visual literacy, grade 12s. You must take note of that. It is basically a content-based question. So you need to not even think about what visual literacy is all about when tackling text B of the comprehension. Right. Then we also want you to take note of a visual versus a verbal cue. Now, this is there to convey meaning or the message of the cartoon, for example, or the advertisement. So a verbal meaning is usually during your contact time defined as anything spoken, all right, the words coming out of the mouth of the particular character, as opposed to the written or relating other words in general. All right. So the verbal is the actual words that is being spoken. In the classroom, the term visual, however, is typically referred to as any form of written dialogue presented in a cartoon or an advertisement, for example, as opposed to visual, which refers to the visual, what your eyes can see, the visual composition of that particular image. All right. And the content of the cartoon, for example. Then further on grade 12s, look at the conclusion, please, of the comprehension. There are significant points mentioned throughout the text. There is then a conclusion, a statement, for example, that the author is stating or the writer is putting through there to make sure that it's all linked to what he is saying. So here you have to consider the final appeal of the conclusion. Okay, what is this writer saying to me? And you gotta look for that when you are reading. Okay, so essentially I'm saying to you, in that 10 minutes, read your text if possible, okay? Read the whole comprehension. Scan the questions, for example, all right? And then, while doing that, during your thought pattern, try and picture what's being said, and then more importantly, try and figure out what's the message that this writer is giving us. Then quotations, grade 12, are an evidence for an answer. So you need to know it's not an answer on its own. You are quoting to substantiate, for example, okay? And that will be tested as well in the comprehension. Then your comparison question, which is usually maybe question 11 or 12, depending on how the marks are broken down in this comprehension test or in this paper one. So that one there is the primary point in each of this is to focus on what text A is saying and what text B is saying in relation to each other, for example, or we would say to you in relation to a specific paragraph. So there you must be careful, please. All right. Otherwise, you're going to lose the marks there if you're going to refer to something completely different from what the question is asking you. So that must be basically summarized in that answer. All right. On question 11 or 12, depending on the layout. Further recommendations with regards to the comprehension question between text A and text B is please refer to the specific paragraph that I said to you. For example, text A, they might be testing you. All right. Then summarize the main idea or the main themes or theme that is in that particular paragraph that we might be referring to. All right. Then the next part, please, is to summarize the gist of text B. All right. You notice there's a format I'm giving you here. Focus on text A, summarize the main ideas or the themes in that particular one. Then in text B, look for the gist of text B. Again, giving us that overall view of text B. All right. And then the next thing is to then look at similarities, for example. If we're asking you to contrast, then there you'd look for differences, okay? But usually it is about comparing, looking for the link that is within the both texts. In most cases, there will be similarities, as I mentioned to you, between a specific paragraph in a text, A, for example, and then the visual given in text, B. So you need to look at that when you're working with question 4. Then explain to us how these texts are similar. And then, most importantly, identify the link. And that will give you the 4 marks that we want you to get in question 11 or 12 of the comprehension. All right. Now, grade 12, if you're studying the last years of papers, or maybe the last 5 years of papers, you will see that you may be expected to look at the following things. I'm not saying it's going to be there, but you have to look at these things, okay? It may appear. Compare the entire text A to text B. Compare a certain number of paragraphs in text A to text B, as I mentioned, and then look for the link. Now, the final 3 out of 4 marks there for the comparing or the contrasting question. This must be attempted grade 12s. Please don't leave it out just because you just think, oh, I've scored marks somewhere else. That's not the case. You need to tackle every single question to the best of your ability in the comprehension, because you never know at which points you would be getting, or at which point you would be getting marks for certain statements that you have made. All right? That is a nice 4 marks if you have mastered the skill on how to answer it. Now remember, grade 12s, with anything you do, there is communication in terms of a communication model. So you are saying something, you are giving that receiver a message, and that receiver there needs to deconstruct to make sense of what you are saying. All right? In the same way, when there's a written piece of work, there is a message coming through there. You read through it and then you deconstruct the sentences, or you analyze what is being said there, and then you formulate your ideas, and then you would be able to then be known as the receiver of the information. All right? So you have to know that communication is very important. So in this case, context is important. All right? In which the decoding takes place. Secondly, who is the writer speaking to? Which type of audience is he referring to? And then why is he or she saying a specific thing? That would then give you the writer's intention. So remember your grade 12s, there's both, as I mentioned, communication through words, verbal, and then the non-verbal, all right? And you need to know the differences when you are working with this passage. Okay. Then the next thing for you to note is that in comprehension, we're testing your ability to understand a whole lot of information. So your word count usually goes to about 600 words or so in this comprehension passage. And we want to see that you've read the text, and now can you give us your understanding of what you have read. So here, grade 12, we're testing your ability to decode content. All right. So the comprehension question in the exam, as I've mentioned, has 2 parts, text A and text B. So text A is that written part, okay, all the words, and then text B usually would have a cartoon, for example, that would come out, or maybe even a drawing, okay? And that's your visual text. So there's both the written and the visual incorporated here. So you need to obviously then know these things. All right. Then remember, the exam questions are based on these 2 texts, and they will test your ability to make sense of what you've read. You've got to then look at the literal versus the figurative meaning. Denotation and connotation comes in here as well, okay? The dictionary meaning versus an implied meaning that the writer is wanting you to take note of. Then also understand his intention, his purpose for writing this particular text. Appreciate the text for what it's worth, the knowledge that he's trying to give you. Appreciate that, because that's where we were testing your level 4 and 5 understanding. All right, those questions will come through there. And then be able to please evaluate this text. Has it reached its purpose or not? Okay, because there is a reason why this writer has written that information. And you need to then figure out whether it has achieved the purpose or not. All right, then with regards to comprehension, you're using your reading skills here. So you're going to try and find the main idea in the text. You're going to locate specific details, and then you're going to show us understanding of the concepts. So try and guess meaning of what's being said. Look at the structure, the coherent flow of the information would come in there in terms of the content. Is it making sense to you, or is everything just jumbled all over the place? That's usually not the case. It would be having a flow from one idea to the next. Pick out the main events. Look for the sequences that are there, okay? Follow the instructions of what's in that particular passage, all right, when you are trying to answer this question. Now, that will be your instructions to the comprehension passage. But while reading the text, there will also be maybe hints that the writer is giving you, information that could be the format of instructions. All right, look at the relationships that come out of this particular text. Maybe it's talking about a specific relationship between two things in the text. All right. And then please, grade 12, draw logical references. Okay. Now, you can use the following thing or the following strategy to work through the comprehension. Firstly, while reading, predict what is to come. Then connect, I would say to you, the dotted lines. There would be information that you might be thinking is missing, and then you're going to try and figure out what it is. So try and have a mind map in your head of what exactly is going on in this text. Then visualize, use your, put your eyes into search mode, for example. Try and visualize what is being spoken about in this particular text. And then question what the writer is saying. Does he make sense, or is he not making sense at all? All right. Then you're going to try and then clarify what is being said, and then you're going to form an evaluative judgment about this. Okay. So if we're looking at this in terms of what I'm talking about here, predict, you're going to try and figure out what might happen next in the text. When you are visualizing, you are picturing what's going on. Maybe characters that are being talked about here. Maybe incidents happening that are in this text. Maybe a place that is being mentioned. You try to visualize that. Then connecting, meaning what you have read to your general understanding of concepts in the real world. All right? When you are doing the questioning part, you are going to ask questions to yourself about what is going on in this text. And then when we are asking you to clarify, for example, you are now putting on that detective eyes. You are investigating. You are identifying what's the main idea here. What is this writer trying to tell me when he is giving his ideas? And then we want you to evaluate. You're going to say to us, has this actually, for example, met its purpose or not? All right? Not a simple yes or no. You've got to be able to justify. And again, when justifying, you are going to use references from the text, for example. All right? So all of your answers will come generally for those things from the text. And if you ask to infer, for example, meaning, you're going to obviously look at the broader understanding that you have of the text. All right. So that's your reading strategy that you need to work with. Now we seem to have a gremlin following us. So I am going to pause for a minute here, grade 12s, and I will come back to you pretty soon.
Excellent. Excellence is a habit. Excellence is a quality you have, a quality I have. It's a quality we have when we honor what is true to us. Yes, we are gifted differently. uNkulunkulu akasinganga ngokufana. Excellence is striving for your best. Whenever you have a particular project, test, homework, uzibuze, ask yourself, is this my best? Can I put in more effort? Excellence is striving to be in the top 1% of the area in which you are gifted. And so I challenge you, in every single thing that you do, in every single area that you're gifted in, whether it's sports, it's academic, ucula, whatever that gift is, strive for excellence.
All right, so now after that gremlin has escaped us and my technical glitch has now stopped. Let's hope it all goes well. So dealing with the reading strategy, grade 12, you need to focus on that, please. All right. The next thing I want you to focus on is the following. Please follow a step-by-step process when using or analyzing the text. The first thing is to make sure that you skim through the passage quickly. All right. Thereafter, read the passage. So I'm going to just ring these things because they're important. All right. We're going to read the passage to make sense, link the events in that particular text. Okay. We're going to encourage you, grade 12s, to please ask questions. So you as a person, when you face this particular text, ask yourself questions while you are reading. All right, then please read again, this time focusing on the questions, because now you're trying to deduce meaning. And then again, read once again, because now you are going to be able to get everything in a logical order and then be able to give us the answer. And then thereafter, you go with the step of answering the questions. And finally, obviously, grade 12s, please make sure that you check your answers. All right, so the first step, as I mentioned, is to skim through the passage quickly. Now, here, grade 12s, I expect you to do the following. And again, I have another glitch. All right, grade 12s, we're going to just pause again and come back.
Excellent. Excellence is a habit. Excellence is a quality you have, a quality I have. It's a quality we have when we honor what is true to us. Yes, we are gifted differently. uNkulunkulu akasinganga ngokufana. Excellence is striving for your best. Whenever you have a particular project, test, homework, uzibuze, ask yourself, is this my best? Can I put in more effort? Excellence is striving to be in the top 1% of the area in which you are gifted. And so I challenge you, in every single thing that you do, in every single area that you're gifted in, whether it's sports, it's academic, ucula, whatever that gift is, strive for excellence.
Okay, and as I was saying, grade 12s, we're going to follow those steps. So the first one is to skim through the passage quickly. Now here, I want you to get a general outline or a general view of what is happening in the text. Thereafter, I want you to please then work with two steps. The first one is to ask the question, who or what is this section about? Thereafter, what is the most important information about this who or what that I am looking for? And then in step 3, which is a critical step, you need to then write down a gist, the main idea of what is happening here. So make sure here, grade 12s, that you follow step 1 and 2, and then this is where you then need to combine everything to get the main idea. All right, then the next thing I want you to work with is the following. Try to get yourself to imagine what is being said. Look for the visual representation, for example. When looking at this, look at these steps when working with skimming. So here, as I said to you, we're going to try and skim through. In other words, we're going to look for the main ideas. You need to firstly read the title and anything else, any other information that's there. It may be subtitles, for example. Read that to get the clue of what is happening in the text. The second thing is to then glance over the text in terms of each of the paragraphs. And then grade 12s, here you can highlight or you can underline, you can make notes on the question paper. Here, try and find that most important statement in each of the paragraphs. And then you will look at what is the link in each of the paragraphs. The third part is to please then read the comprehension questions in the text, or that is connected to the text. So you will read the comprehension passage, then go to the questions, and then try and match your ideas to what the question is asking you. And then at step 4, you then obviously need to verify that what you are saying is correct by again revisiting the text and then checking that the answers are correct. All right, the next thing I want you to do, grade 12s, is the following. To please read the passage whilst you are linking the content with the title. All right, and here, remember the following. The title may, in most of the situations, offer you a clue of the contents that is to come and the purpose that the writer had in saying these things. The author then may help you while you're reading to identify time, for example, or style, and often the subject that he or she is talking about. All right? The next thing that is important is to look at the introduction because that creates the general atmosphere, the general idea of what is going to be spoken about in this text. All right? And then we have that critical thing, which is the setting that will come out in the introduction. And then grade 12, after reading through all those 600 words, we get to the conclusion. And that usually ties up what the intention of the author is. So here's a particular diagram I found that was quite useful when looking at the comprehension passage. So as you are studying, this is tips before you are going to write the exam. So as you're studying, take this for example and look at what the main idea is. You need to be able to, in 1 or 2 words, for example, give us what the article is mostly talking about. And then what is it about, for example, must come through, all right? And how is this relevant to you or the general public would then be the next step to work out. So if you can maybe look at a 10-word gist of each of the paragraphs, grade 12s, that will help you to gauge meaning of what is being said. All right. The next thing you need to work with, obviously, is then to ask yourself the questions while reading. So these we call leading questions. You should ask yourself, for example, who is the writer? Who are the possible characters that are being mentioned? Secondly, what is the main idea of this passage or this text? Thirdly, where does it take place? The setting that this particular piece is talking about, okay? And then when does it take place? Look at things like the time or the date, for example, that this particular article was, reproduced for you, for example, right? That's talking about at that particular time frame, these kind of things were happening. You, as I said, need to be aware of generally what's happening in the social media right now or in the media generally, the issues affecting a typical teenager going into the real world after school. That's more or less where your frame of thought should be at this moment in time, okay, at this point. Then once you've done that, you need to know or look at why has this been said in the passage. And here we are gauging to see if you've read and understood what is being said. And then grade 12s, that impact question. How is what the writer saying to you? How does that impact you? All right, as a reader. What are you getting from him? Is your mind frame changing to the positive or the negative, for example? These are things you are working with when you are trying to deduce meaning. All right, there you're looking at the kind of language he's used, for example, okay? That's important because he won't talk nonsense or use things like, a lot of slang, for example, if he's giving you a very real, concrete viewpoint, isn't it? So you need to be aware of the different types of language as well when you are working with the comprehension. All right? Then the next thing is to formulate the gist as mentioned to you using the list, the leading questions. Again, the 5 W's and the H question must be looked at there. All right, another simpler diagram there for you. Then step 4, grade 12s, is to read the passage again, and this time to focus on the questions while reading. So when you read the text, keep the passage in mind. This will give you the clues that you need to remember when you are trying to find the answers. Many teachers and learners today, like you, are preferring to read the questions before reading the passage. This is okay, but remember, once you've done that, you've got to read again the text because then you are able to link the content with what the question is. Find meaning in the words that are there. So here, you need to, for example, during your practice time or your studying time, take the dictionary. Look for particular words that have been in the last years of papers and see, look them up. Can you make sense of what those words are? And then look at your synonyms, your antonyms, all of those things come in, okay? The parts of speech, all that comes in when you're preparing for this paper. So you would then be able to see, okay, the last paper in 2022, for example, spoke about this concept and used these words. Will I see relevance with these words today in life? And then maybe those words appear in the 2023 paper, and now you have been able to understand. All right, so make use of the dictionary to familiarize yourself with difficult words there. So let's take a practical way here for you to work with finding meanings in words. First, in grade 12, when you get the text, try and sound it out, not obviously loud as you're speaking, but in your mind, sound out the word that is in the text to try and gauge meaning. Then try and figure out the root word from where this word came from. Look at the prefix used, for example, or the suffix used. Remember, before the word, all right, for example, and then your suffix. Examine the word that is used in this text. So again, contextualize that word for what is in front of you. And then look at the context and its connotation. So for example, grade 12, you come across words that do not make sense to you. If you just try and break up that word, deconstruct that word, you should kind of get a kind of sense of what that word is trying to get you to understand. All right? The next thing that you need to then work with is step 5, to read the passage again. And now once you've done that, you now have an idea of the questions and you're now linking the text. All right. This time you should be aware of what has been asked. Then grade 12s also highlight the main idea as I mentioned to you previously. When you're making those notes of each paragraph, highlight the main idea. All right. Then the first sentence is often the key sentence. Often is the buzzword here. It may not be in the first line. It may be in the second line, for example. You need to find that when you are working through the passage. The words and ideas, grade 12s, that are given to you here are not there to, make you totally confused. So it will be difficult at the first part, but as you get to work with the text, it should become more clearer for you. All right, while you're working with that. And then the more familiar you are with what the passage is saying to you, it's easier for you to then answer the questions. So when looking at this paper, grade 12s, something that's very important, which you have seen over the years by now, and I'm sure your teachers have mentioned to you, is a Barrett's taxonomy. Now, with the Barrett's taxonomy, these are tackling the various levels of questioning. So if you're thinking about it in terms of step 1 or question level 1, I have the text in front of me. There are very basic things I need to understand. That's level 1, all right? Then when I'm going into level 2, 3, 4, and 5, I'm now saying, you've got this. Can you now, for example, give me the main idea? Once you've done that, can you now formulate an opinion or a judgment based on what you have said? So while going through that process, grade 12s, you are dealing with the various levels of understanding. And when we are setting the papers, we are testing the levels that we want you to work with, which will be level 1 up to level 5, your understanding of what you are reading. So with the level 1 and level 2 questions, generally your level 1 is sort of placed within your level 2 or level 3 questioning. All right, but keywords you must be looking at here is, for example, describe, identify, illustrate, or for example, list. Now, again, you may not see this in the last 5 years of paper, but you more or less would have seen the word discuss if you have been paying attention to your teacher while she's teaching you this, how to analyze the comprehension, and obviously the terms that you will be facing. Now, that is important for your level 1 and level 2 questions. When dealing with level 3 grade 12s, we are then talking about the fact of, can you infer meaning? So can you deduce or conclude what is being said? Now here your reasoning comes out, okay? Your reasoning capacity is being tested and you need to be able to reason through the text. And then we're dealing with level 4 and 5 questions. Here we are talking about the fact that you've read something, you've now formulated a judgment or an opinion of it. All right? Now is your judgment or your opinion relevant again to what the text is being speaking about. So there you need to obviously think about it very clearly, right? What have you learned from the text? Does it make sense to you or not? And that's where we are now testing your judgmental or critical thinking as an individual. Now, the questions are usually very much, we call these open-ended. But again, it can't be a point where your answers are so far off that they do not link to the text. So again, your mind frame should be to contextualize your thinking to what is being said. There will be outside views on these things, yes, but again, bring them into the context of what the text is saying to you. All right, so buzzword, contextualize your viewpoint. Okay, so the next thing, grade 12s, is to then basically look at the Barrett taxonomy. For example, here in this diagram is quite simply put to you, all right? And then look at the kind of words or the terminology we use, for each of the levels. You can go through this in your own time. All right, so we're testing your head knowledge. What are you just getting here? And then as it goes further into your analysis of this text, it's affecting your inner being. It's making you formulate ideas, formulate judgments. And that's where we now testing you with the level 4 and level 5 questions. All right, looking for that hidden meaning in the text. Now, put all of that aside when you are, for now. We are now going to show you how to tackle an exam paper with what we have covered thus far in this lesson. So while you are preparing for the prelim or the final exams, you need to take note of what I've said to you and then apply it. Actually sit down and write a paper 1 during 2 hours of time that is allocated. And you do it and see if you can handle this paper in 2 hours. If you're then breaking it up into specific sections, then you must give yourself 50 minutes to tackle the comprehension. All right, so here is the 2023's paper that has been written in June. So you need to work with, if you have this paper, you can work through it, or you can work with the, as I said, the last 5 years of papers. All right, so text A spoke about laughter in the time of the pandemic. Now, this was again very relevant to what? Us. The pandemic here was the COVID-19 pandemic that we spoke about in this text, and you had to then again read the text, but there was outside information in terms of how you experienced COVID-19. All right, that would also be in your frame of thinking. And then once you've got all of that in your mind frame, you're then going to work with what is happening in this particular text. So you take the 10 minutes, skim through, read this text thoroughly, highlight, jot down main ideas, and then you work with them. All right. So text A spoke about the COVID-19 pandemic. And then text B had the diagram that follows on this slideshow, dealing with the concept of stuck between a rock and a hard place. So you needed to deduce meaning. What is this text trying to show me? if you just looked at this text right now, you would already see COVID-19. That is the visual representation, all right, of that sort of you know the image of overpowering coming over there, right? And the word written is COVID-19. And then you look at that, as I mentioned to you, that the important information there of between a rock and a hard place. So that in your mind frame should then be saying to you that something of entrapment coming here. All right. Do I go this way or I go that way? And if I do actually don't go anywhere, what's happening? I'm stuck. All right. So I'm either going to continue to be in the position and pass on, for example, or, continue in the negative, or I could change. But in this case, there is this thing of being trapped between what? COVID-19, as it's visually shown, and the text of the written there, COVID-19, versus poverty and hunger in the text, okay? And there again, if you are into watching horror movies, for example, and I know at some point in your life you would have seen a horror movie, all right? You would definitely identify the image of the Grim Reaper, all right? And he obviously is now never a good image, and he brings about suffering, okay? So he's got this written text on his robe of poverty and hunger. So you are stuck between COVID-19 and poverty and hunger. Either way, there's going to be a negative result. So you needed to again look at the image holistically. And then look at the text of the female with the baby on her back. All right. You can see it's representative of what? The poor. Okay. And there you can see, grade 12s, that when talking about the poor person here, for example, he or she is stuck in the middle. All right. So I've done quite a good analysis there, or thorough analysis for you there. And hopefully when you are going through this paper, or you're seeing something like this, you would be able to do the same thing. All right. Now, what's important is when we have the questions that have been set for us. And I'm going to see if I can now get my pen out to maybe make some notes while we're breaking down the questions for understanding. All right. So if we're looking at the questions in the text or in the paper, question 1.1 said to us, refer to paragraph 1. What does, so again, referring to paragraph 1, important. The question then is, word is, what does the writer indicate about the behavior of South Africans? So that's very straightforward, which means grade 12s, it is a level 1 or level 2 question here where we are dealing with identifying concepts that have already been taught. So this is a comprehension type question. And what that means is that you are required to recall information. From where? Obviously from paragraph 1, as I mentioned to you. All right. Now, the answer given in the paper was, or the memo was the following. The blackouts or load shedding have an adverse or unfavorable action or effect on various sectors, which impacts negatively on the South African economy. Now, if I try and go back to the text, let me just see if I can do that for you. And I go to paragraph 1, for example. All right. If we look at paragraph 1, it read, almost immediately after the first case of COVID-19 was confirmed in South Africa, the joke started. From memes featuring bad puns to pictures of people posing with silly homemade protective gear. South Africans took to social media to make fun of the virus. This is not unusual for South Africans who make jokes about their many problems. From potholes to power outages or blackouts, cartoonists never seem to have a shortage of material. All right, grade 12s, we're going to break for a minute and we're going to come back and then dissect this a little bit further. See you soon.
You have been given power to decide whether you want good results in your life, in your schoolwork, or you want bad results. As Tony Robbins said, it is in the moment of your decision that your destiny is shaped. And your destiny is shaped right now with the decisions that you are currently making in your schoolwork. So decide whether you want to be an A student and start working on it, because there is power inside of you. The infinite power is inside of you, and the time you decide to tap in that power, you will become who you want to become in your schoolwork.
Okay, grade 12. So we're back after that short break and we were dealing with question 1.1. So if you looked at paragraph 1, you would have seen that South Africans usually would be going to the social media and making jokes about the serious issues we are facing. So they take it in their stride. But the essence of the paragraph was trying to show us that the blackouts, or in this case, the load shedding, have always had a negative or an unfavorable impact on us. And that was obviously negative. And then that would then affect the economy, obviously, from that point of view of we are affected by it and we are part of the economy, which means the South African economy is affected negatively. And just for that, you would have got the 2 marks. All right. Then you would see that the next question spoke about the following. If I get to that question, it read, refer to paragraph 2. You would again see there is this statement of refer to paragraph 2. So the information that's needed for this answer of this question will come from paragraph 2, for example, or when you read paragraph 2, you will get an idea and you have to deduce further meaning, all right, of what's being said. So the question here was explain how social media has influenced the way people engage with the news. Again, breaking down the question, as I mentioned to you, paragraph 2 is the reference and the word explain. All right, so you need to what? Read, understand, and give us your view on this. All right. So we're going to obviously ask you to make reference to certain things in the answer. So this is testing your ability to reorganize the facts given. Another comprehension type question here for you, and then you're going to use the keywords from the question itself. So the answer given in this for this question was South Africa is unequipped to deal with the load shedding situation as this has never occurred before. So it's an unusual happening in our lives thus far. It's out of the ordinary. It's uncommon to experience load shedding for many South Africans. Although we've got over maybe 5 years or more of experience of this, generally it wasn't something that should have been happening all the time. But we know there's a crisis, for example, with the power outages that we have. There's a crisis with that, and the companies obviously are trying to make sure that we get the electricity, but it doesn't always happen. All right, so here it has become something that's uncommon previously, but it's now becoming quite common for us. So we have been unable to deal with it effectively over the time frame. All right, so please, again, this is when you are studying for this paper. You will be able to break it down into level 1, level 2, level 3 questions. And remember, the comprehension type question is dealing with you trying to put the facts down, explain the facts, all right? And this one is asking you to reorganize using the keywords in paragraph 2. Then looking at the next question, 1.3, here again it's saying to you, refer to paragraph 3. Now, grade 12s, do you see the sequential flow of where we want you to look? You need to be looking at that when you are studying. And question 3 says, study why the writer starts the paragraph with a question. Now, this is a question that appears over the years. And they would say to you, comment on why there is a single line paragraph. You need to then know what the single line paragraph is, right? In other words, sort of define it, if I can say to you, in your head, and thereafter you need to refer it to the text that is in front of you. So link it to the content of the text in front of you. So this is a level 4 question, and here we're asking for your viewpoint. All right. So it's a technical type question, and you should answer this question using the keywords from the question itself. So if you have provided a technical answer, you would be guaranteed 1 mark. All right. So that's important. Just for giving us, a technical response, you will get 1 mark just for that. And then if we're looking for the next mark, you got to then be able to expand on that comment and then link it to what is being spoken about. Good. Now, the answer given here was, our access to food and basic needs are threatened directly and indirectly as food manufacturers incur a loss of productivity and jobs are then threatened or lost. Now, remember paragraph 1 spoke about the negative effects, all right? And then we get to paragraph 2, as we spoken about just now in the previous question, we dealt with those concepts. And now in paragraph 3, we are dealing with the fact that these are the causes that are happening because of, or the effects of the load shedding that is happening in the economy. So jobs are lost, for example. There's a lack of productivity that's taking place. So because we're not able to produce a lot, we are incurring major losses. And load shedding, particularly grade 12s, is the threat to our livelihoods. And then the severity of this load shedding can then, within us as the reader, evoke an emotional response. So we can either laugh it off and think it's one of those things to deal with, or we take it seriously because it impacts us negatively and we try and move away from it. Try and make it a better condition to deal with. So again, we're testing your ability to give us that viewpoint. All right. So here we're saying look at also valid responses that come out. Again, that is catering for a different viewpoint from this particular answer. But again, grade 12s, it cannot be way out there where you are totally confusing the theme of this text. All right. So bring it back to what the text is looking at. Good. Then the next one, question 1.4 says to us, refer to paragraph 4. And again here, look at the buzz keyword that's being used there, comment. So you need to offer a comment and give us the viewpoint. Make sure it makes sense. So comment on what? The writer's objectivity. So we know by reading this question that the writer is objective. He's not subjective in what he's saying. All right. So we're saying he is objective in his discussion to pavement radio. Now, pavement radio is the concept or the term that has been spoken about in the text. And in paragraph 4, it would obviously be explained to you there. All right. So here again, level 4 or 5 questioning done here is looking for your opinion with a supporting evidence from the text. So whenever you see the words, for example, comment or critically comment, you have to remember the following, grade 12s. Here you got to look at both the pros and the cons, meaning the advantages and the disadvantages, the good and the bad. And then once you've done that, what should you do? You then need to come up with a fair viewpoint based on that, which is unbiased, grade 12s, and it must be obviously loaded with important information, all right, as to why you have that viewpoint. So you have to substantiate. Now, comment means that in a way you are giving us that objective analysis, all right, and you're then evaluating the issue that is being spoken about, as I've mentioned to you. So the answer for 1.4 was the following. Rolling blackouts implies that load shedding is back to back daily. So in other words, it is sort of an everyday situation. So now we make use of diction. The hobbled economic output that's found in the paragraph suggests that the economy, South African economy, is crippled. It's struggling to keep afloat because of the long hours that we are seeing load shedding taking place in. All right. Now, in terms of economic status, if you are an economic student or student doing economics, you would know about supply and demand, for example. All right. If you're doing business studies, you would know, for example, gross domestic product or the services that are being rendered. So here it's saying in the text that if there's a decline and the gross domestic products decrease, this would adversely or negatively affect the economy, and this is because of load shedding. So it's one of the negative things coming out of the long hours of load shedding. Now, grade 12s, here if you give us one or two examples, just mentioning the diction that is being used, for example, all right, you will get the mark. But you have to then discuss it further. And when you discuss it further, you're giving us a comment, we're then giving you that third mark. All right. If you're going to give us two fully discussed, with the reference to the diction and your qualitative response, your viewpoint here, then you would get the 3 marks combined. All right. So please be aware of that when you are tackling these questions with the words dealing with comment or critically discuss. Then in terms of number 1.5 in the text, in the questions, it did ask you again to refer to another paragraph. And in this instance, paragraph 5. We said to again look at the key word, the terminology used. And here it said, discuss the what? Effect of humor. So again, it's generally a question that comes out in the question paper 1. You need to know, why would you make light of something? All right. Now that would also link to your question 3, for example, the satire, that kind of thing. All right. Making a mock of something serious. You will come across these terms. Hopefully you already have mastered these terms. So when we're saying look at the humor and then discuss the effect of humor. And in this case, with regards to paragraph, we're saying look at the effect that the humor that is being mentioned in the text has on community building. All right. A level 3 or 4 here coming in, looking for the discussion of a viewpoint. This again is having a technical element to it. And the answer given in the guidelines was the writer makes use of jargon. Now, if you don't know what the term jargon means, that means that you need to go back and revise. Make sure you know the term jargon. All right. So quarter on quarter GDP recovery quarter, that means those are specific words used in that section of the economy, meaning the economic sector. These are normal terms they would be using. And formal language, which creates a sophisticated concept, all right, of the impact on our country's economy. So again, those words being used again, and the formal language in this text are going to give us this sort of higher level of understanding of the economy. The use of the quotation, very important. Remember, a quote is there to give us validation, all right, of what's being said. So a quotation by the Bureau further emphasizes the urgent need for South African people to use private sector power generators, which makes it then authentic and credible. So it's saying that they want us to find alternative ways to deal with this load shedding that's happening. Now, you would come across things like generators or inverters, for example, being created to compensate for the time when the power is out. And then this would then be where that becomes relevant with regards to the comment for this question. All right. So that is something to look at. Again, just for a simple identification of a style, you would get 1 mark and then 2 marks for your comment that must be thoroughly given to us in this response. All right. So 1.6 deals with paragraph 6. And again, here, grade 12, when reading the question, you will highlight and you will indicate certain keywords that would make you then think further. The word discuss. So the question reads, discuss how diction, in other words, the choice of words used by the writer in this paragraph conveys the writer's attitude towards mainstream media. So the writer has a viewpoint, an attitude, okay, a viewpoint that he has formulated over his time of writing this text. He has it with regards to the mainstream media. Now you need to look at the words he's used to give you that viewpoint and then discuss it, explain it to us. All right. Again, this is a technical element that is required of you in this particular response as well. So, firstly, look at the tone, for example, all right, in relation to the diction that is being used. So the tone that comes out of this particular paragraph is one of being aggrieved, of being resentful, of being almost angry and upset or distressed about the negative part of load shedding. And now this is then linked to what Forbes as a company refers to significant damage. All right, where billions of rands are then being wiped out of the country's economic status because there's so much of the load shedding taking place, for example, that has an adverse or a negative effect on the economy, and that is causing you and I to be very angry, upset. The tone coming out from this is obviously what the writer is, his viewpoint. All right, his tone is one of being very distressed about it, being aggrieved by what's happening, because he's talking about the negative effects of load shedding. So the writer impresses upon you and I as the reader to then take note that we need, or there's an urgency for the need in change to take place. Our mindsets needs to move towards load shedding, where we need to now look for alternative ways to deal with it. All right. Other energy resources need to then be employed to sort of reduce the negative effect of load shedding. So again, a mere mark or 2, in this case 1 mark, sorry, for the tone, and then the 2 marks for the comment, where you're imploring or using the, making use of the words that have been used in the text. All right, then the next one, 1.7, looked at or looked as follows, where it mentioned comment critically on the impact. So remember, I mentioned to you in Barrett's taxonomy, we took the head value, the thinking value, and as you went deeper and you understood the concepts, it had an impact on you, okay? That inner being was affected by it. So here we're looking at that, commenting critically on the impact of paragraph 7 on you as the reader. So your own viewpoint again, your judgment formulated here with supporting evidence. I did mention to you what comment means. So again, you're looking at both sides, giving us the objective analysis. So the answer here, grade 12's, was the following. With reference to the operations of small businesses in South Africa, they seem to fail. Why? Because of because they are on the municipal grid. All right. So they have the load shedding and they're not able to sustain themselves due to the long hours that they are experiencing load shedding. The claims then prove that load shedding has created a destructive streak. So companies cannot maintain themselves over the time frame because they're incurring far too much loss. Therefore, tearing South Africa's economy down. So one mark there for that and the second mark for that comment. And then due to this, they cannot then afford generators, for example, or solar power to keep them running. And therefore, they are forced to close as a result of this. So again, there must be a reference, please, to both paragraph 6 and the title. All right. Again, as mentioned, the question will tell you where to look and what the examiner is looking for. And you need to then give us a response. 1.8 says refer to paragraph 10. Here, the buzzword in this one, again, terminology is important, please. Look at the word assess. So you've got discuss, explain, comment, comment critically, and now you've got assess the validity of the writer's conclusion. So he's concluded his article. He's given you his viewpoint. His intention comes out clearly in the conclusion, as I mentioned to you before. Now you need to assess. In other words, work out whether this is a valid viewpoint or not that the writer holds. Right. There again, looking at your own viewpoint in relation to what the writer is talking about. His answer, or the answer given here, was the rolling load shedding blackouts does not allow for backup emergencies to recharge because towers are interlinked. So connectivity is inconsistent. So when there's a break in the connectivity, you would see that it takes a longer time to reconnect. There will be that buffering. There will be, that lag in information being given from one source to the other. So because of these rolling blackouts for long periods of time, the emergency setup is not able to always function. And the high usage of the fuel to then again recharge or to back up the system is causing companies to become really struggle or really find themselves in a struggling position here. So it's threatening the company's image of reliability, and it's then causing an escalation in costs. Negative. We have to spend more money to maintain this particular functioning of the grid. So these challenges have impacted the consumers, obviously, negatively, all right? And they are then having, if they're having a business, for example, they would need to close down, or if their income is being affected, they would actually suffer negatively. Again, as mentioned, the high cost of the fuel again is then making it very difficult to maintain. This is then threatening the company's survival and reliability. Again, grade 12s, if you're giving us that critical analysis, in other words, you're taking us through the various problems that these rolling blackouts are creating for us, you would definitely get the 3 marks. So work it in the sense that you give us 2 very important points, discuss clearly, or if you're going to give us 1 also, it's possible, but you've got to discuss it very clearly. But then the qualitative or the response that the examiner was looking for here says, award full marks only if a critical discussion is included. So if you've taken the information and offered your viewpoint with the supporting evidence of the text, that's when you would get the full 3 marks. Okay, 1.9 dealt with how does the depiction, okay, so this is now in reference to text B, sorry. So we've done text 1, we're now dealing particularly only with text B. All right, and that's signaled to you in your question paper where it would say, for example, text A 1.1 all the way to 1.7, for example, then it will say text B, and it'll have maybe 1 or 2 questions, and then you'd have the text A and text B question. So there you would see that they are also assisting you to focus on particular things. So 1.9 asks the question, how does a depiction of a woman evoke sympathy? Now, generally, if you are again in touch with the social media, you would know that the females always obviously seemed to be sort of, inferior compared to the men, if I can say it. Or it would be coming out that, she needs more support compared to a gentleman, for example, right? Maybe the term inferior is the wrong term to use here. I'm sure it is. But what we want to show here is obviously that there will be the softness in the female that needs to be taken care of. Now, in the terms of this particular text, it dealt with the lady in the middle of the rock and the hard place, and she has the baby on her shoulders. So how would that create sympathy? No, sorry. Yes, Mother Anderson is hysterical, overthinking, a state of panic, anxious or stressed or nervous, fed up with the fact that lights are still on during the planned time of load shedding. Now, this actually, grade 12s, is the incorrect answer to the text. All right. When dealing with the woman in the text B, so I'm going to put a line through here, sorry. When dealing with the text of the lady in between the rock and the hard place, right? How would that have evoked sympathy? She obviously looks like if you go back to the text of text B, let me just see if I can go back all the way. It's going to go all the way back to the questions. Just a few seconds more. 1.3, 1.2. I should have actually put it on the text. But anyway, let's go back quickly to text B. All right. So here it is. If we're looking at the lady there, represents the poor. All right. How does that evoke sympathy? We can see that she's stuck between either she gives in to COVID-19 and suffers the effects, or she gives in to this fate of being hungry and stuck in poverty. All right. And you can see her face. She's very distressed. You can almost see that there's like tears coming down the eyes. And the fact that she has the child on her back means that she doesn't know now. She's dealing with the concept of how do I get myself out of the situation? I've got to take care of things. I've got the baby, for example, all of these things happening. But where does she turn? Does she turn to COVID and then just deal with the negative effects and then never has success there? Or does she also then look at now being stuck with poverty and obviously being hungry because there's not enough food or not enough resources available to her to maintain herself and this child? All right. So that sympathy comes in where we feel almost, sad for her. We feel for the fact that this is where she's at. She either has to give in to one or the other, and the result's never going to be positive for her. So that is how we would look at this evoking of sympathy. All right, let's get back to the next text. Ooh, and now I'm frozen again. Let me get this thing to work again, grade 12s. Okay, my gadget is not working. Let's try, and now there we go. All right, back to normal. So if we're going to go back to that question 1.9 that I was dealing with, let me just get there to take you through it again. 0.7, done. 8, we dealt with 8. Validity. All right, 9. There we go. All right, so that's dealing with the sympathy. You want to show about the fact that she's stuck between these 2 points. All right, that comes out there in 1.9. And that's again very much an entry level 1.9, which you can definitely get the 2 marks just by discussing that. All right, then 1.10, we're dealing with commenting on how the visual and the verbal cues convey the message of the cartoon. So again, looking at the visual, right? What do you see versus the verbal, what is written. All right. So the images there shown to you, Grim Reaper versus the overlapping or the overture of the, the COVID-19 there. And then you've got the actual written words of COVID-19 and hunger and poverty there. And obviously you can look at that a bit further. So when looking at the word again, comment, remember I said to you, looking at an objective analysis. The answer here was the fact that, again, this is not a response we are looking at. I'm going to pause for a minute, grade 12s, and I'm going to come back to you right now just to check what happened with this slide.
Excellent. Excellence is a habit. Excellence is a quality you have, a quality I have. It's a quality we have when we honor what is true to us. Yes, we are gifted differently. uNkulunkulu akasinganga ngokufana. Excellence is striving for your best. Whenever you have a particular project, test, homework, uzibuze, ask yourself, is this my best? Can I put in more effort? Excellence is striving to be in the top 1% of the area in which you are gifted. And so I challenge you, in every single thing that you do, in every single area that you're gifted in, whether it's sports, it's academic, ucula, whatever that gift is, strive for excellence.
Okay, great, Wells. My apologies on that. There has been a few of the glitches that we are trying to work out, but hopefully now we can just make sense of what this question's asking us. So critically discuss the extent to which text B reinforces the writer's views presented in paragraph 9 of text A. So you look at paragraph 9 of text A, and there it's talking about, the jokes coming out, the coping mechanisms used in the economy for us to try and come up with sorting out this issue or trying to make light of it, but to deal with the consequences of it. Okay, so there you've got to look at paragraph 9 to really give us a summary of what's happening in paragraph 9. And then in the next part, look at text B. The fact that this is linked to the fact that because there's all these negative things, this person with the baby on her back, the lady, is stuck between the hard place and the rock. So she really doesn't have a way out. And whatever the result is going to be here is going to be negative. So your answer must touch on paragraph 9 of text A, where I'm giving you that summary there, grade 12s, dealing with the fact that we're using these things, humor, to be the coping mechanism, to actually deal with humor and make light of what's happening, but also realize that it's a serious issue. And the negative is obviously then linked to to text B, where we are stuck in this rut. Either we go this way and suffer the consequences of COVID-19, or go the other way and also suffer the consequences of poverty and hunger. And the end result will obviously be negative, which is what the writer is saying in text A. There is the negativity coming out of load shedding and the long periods of load shedding. And these are the consequences that we are facing. So you got to be able to look at 2 points in text A, 2 points in text B, and give us the summary as I mentioned to you when dealing with this comparative question. So go back to the hint I gave you at the beginning of this lesson and work with that with regards to this question. All right, so there is that dysfunctionality coming through of our economy. So grade 12s, what is the way forward from here when you're dealing with the paper? Please remember, in closure, that each question usually contains that question word. You need to underline it, and you need to know what the term explain, list, critically comment, for example, means. Then remember, each question usually contains a keyword or key idea. You can then please on the question paper encircle it, and while making the notes, highlight the important points of where that is relevant to in the text. All right. The next thing is to please try and remember whether you read this fact at the beginning of the text, or the middle, or at the end of the text. And then this will help when you are highlighting to gauge meaning. All right. The next thing, as I mentioned to you at the beginning of this lesson, is to always have your eyes in the search mode. Be the detective trying to find out, what is this writer saying to me, and how am I going to deduce meaning? Obviously, going through the process of, looking at paragraph 1, looking at paragraph 2, 3, 4, and 5, the main ideas that you're finding in each paragraph, examples mentioned, for example, and then you are then going to give us a complete viewpoint in each of the answers. Also, grade 12s, please remember to do the following. Jot down the important points, as I mentioned. Okay, gain the gist, the main idea of what is mentioned in text A and text B. And that comes in your 4-mark question at the end. More importantly, please do not copy word for word in your for your responses. There will be parts that we expect you to just give us an answer, and sometimes you'll quote the entire line as it is written there. It's a problem. You will not get the benefit. However, we have things known as blended answers, where you take part of the actual text and you then put in 2 or 3 different words again, based on the knowledge you have of the text, you then link it there, and you would then get what we call blended, okay, lifting, and then you would get the marks for that. So again, grade 12s, if you don't want to even think about those things, make sure that when you read the text, you give us exactly what is expected of you. All right, deduce the meaning, give us the answers to match the questions. All right, and then grade 12s, I want to thank you so much for bearing with me this afternoon. I know that this has been a little bit of a, touch and go in terms of the glitches we had, but it's been nevertheless a fruitful session. And I hope you go back and take the hints I've given to you and then work with your preparation for paper 1. Again, I'd like to thank you for watching this lesson, and until we meet again next time, do take care.